The fleet wakes up with an over-the-air update. 2 years from now, we make a car that has no steering wheels or pedals.
Hey, this is Warren Redlick. I want to talk to you today about robotaxis. And in particular, I want to talk about the future where we're going to have robotaxis that are going to be low cost per mile and very convenient, competing, at least in the short run, with mass transit, which tends to be very inconvenient and isn't always that low cost. I asked my YouTube following, my YouTube subscribers, what they thought was most interesting, whether it was robotaxis versus local mass transit, robotaxis versus airplanes, robotaxis versus trains. They were most interested in robotaxis versus local mass transit. So that's the comparison I'm doing today. I may do the other ones in the future. I'm going to cover a bunch of different cities from different countries. So if you want to skip ahead to the city that's most interesting to you, look down at the description below, and I'm going to put an index that takes you to the time code. Click on that, it'll take you to the time in the video where I cover that particular location. I'm going to cover Los Angeles, San Francisco, South Florida, Miami, and Boca Raton and Fort Lauderdale. I'm going to cover 2 different routes in New York City. I'm also going to cover a route in London, England, a route in Sydney, Australia, and a route in Toronto, Canada. So check in the description if you want to skip ahead to see what those routes are going to be like, and click on the time code. It'll take you to that spot in the video. So I looked at big cities in particular. I looked at Los Angeles and San Francisco and California. I looked at Miami and Florida. I looked at New York City. In England, I looked at London. In Canada, I looked at Toronto. And in Australia, I looked at Sydney. And I did some comparisons to see what's the commute like if you take a robotaxi, a prospective, what do we think a robotaxi ride will be like in terms of how long will it take and how many miles will it be and how much will that cost in a few different scenarios, versus today, what is it like if you want to take mass transit? You're going to take buses, trains, whatever's available, subways, to try to get from point A to point B. And of course it's challenging. Well, what do you choose as what points to start with and what points to end with? So in some cases I did what I thought was pretty obvious. In others I picked locations that were appropriate for the fact that this is really about Tesla.
The cost of ride sharing is, according to Uber and Lyft, is $2 to $3 a mile. The cost to run a robotaxi, we think less than 18 cents a mile and dropping. Like this would be current. This is current cost. Future costs will be lower.
I figured the robotaxi cost in 3 different ways. In the early days of robotaxi, it may cost as much as $1 a mile, but I think fairly quickly we're going to see robotaxi get down to 50 cents a mile. I looked at some sources that gave me confidence to say that the cost of operating a Tesla Model 3 or Model Y, including depreciation and everything else, is going to be less than 25 cents a mile. The cost to the owner of the vehicle is going to be less than 25 cents a mile. Elon Musk has said they're targeting 18 cents a mile and it should go down. The company Testloop, which operates Model 3s in California and Nevada, says that they spend less than 25 cents a mile, or they project that their cost per mile will be 25 cents or less. If you're charging 50 cents a mile, which is what I'm using for my initial estimate for robotaxi cost, 50 cents a mile would mean the owner of the vehicle is making a 25 cent a mile profit, double what their cost is. They're spending 25 cents a mile, they're getting 50 cents a mile. They're making very good margin at 50 cents a mile. I do think the cost per mile is going to be higher initially when there's a low volume of robotaxis out there competing with Ubers and others who are charging $2 a mile. You don't have to undercut them all the way to 50 cents a mile to get a lot of rides. You can go down to $1 a mile and you should still be fine. Once there's a lot of robotaxis out there, and I think California in particular will be saturated before anywhere else, once there's a lot of robotaxis out there, the price is likely to come down, and I think 50 cents a mile is a good ballpark estimate for an early stage price for robotaxi using Model 3 or Model Y.
In any locations where there's not enough supply for sharing, Tesla will just make its own cars and add them to the network in that place. So we'll actually be adjusting tire design and really optimizing the car for a hyper-efficient robotaxi. Robotaxis with eliminated parts, it maybe ends up being $25,000 or less. And you want a super efficient car so that the electricity consumption is very low.
Stage would be when a purpose-built robotaxi comes out, something that is designed specifically for robotaxi purposes. There's no steering wheel, there's no brake pedals. A lot of the hardware that is designed for a driver is gone, and that lowers the cost. And again, I'm talking 5 years from now, maybe 10 years from now, when we see a much more efficient robotaxi, that the operating cost may get down to 10 cents a mile, and then we might see a price of 20 cents a mile to the consumer. This is when we have a lot of robotaxis on the road, and the pricing of 20 cents a mile would make sense. It would serve a lot of people, but there's a lot of robotaxis out there to fill the demand. And then the third step was to say, well, what about when we get to my fantasy of pod car robotaxis, which are very inexpensive vehicles that are very low cost to operate, have very low depreciation. And I think with pod car robotaxis, you get down to a cost of a nickel a mile to the owner, charging 10 cents a mile to the customer. And that's probably 10 years down the road, maybe a little further. Now, I started in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is the biggest city in California. California is far and away the biggest location of a following for this channel. California is our biggest state by far. So I looked at two different routes. I looked at SpaceX headquarters to Los Angeles City Hall, and I looked at SpaceX headquarters to University of California, Los Angeles, or UCLA. In California, I picked an 8 a.m. start time, which would be a normal commute. First, I looked at SpaceX headquarters to LA City Hall. Now, I should say I'm familiar with the area around SpaceX headquarters. I've never been to headquarters myself, but my brother lives nearby. I'm familiar with Hawthorne, California, Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, that area. It's a beautiful area, and a lot of people live there. So it's a natural place in that general area that people would be commuting from there to go to downtown Los Angeles. I used Google Maps to do this. Number one, I used Google Maps to check what's the drive time, what's the mileage to drive from point A to point B, and at the same time, Google Maps allows you to plan out your mass transit. And I actually have used that a lot, especially when I go to New York City. I use Google Maps to plan my trips when I'm going from one place to another in New York City, including trains on Long Island, including the subway, including buses if need be. So to get from SpaceX headquarters to Los Angeles City Hall, you take bus 210 to bus 240. You have to do some walking up the street to get to Crenshaw Boulevard, then you ride the bus and you get where you need to go. According to Google Maps, that trip on a weekday morning is going to take about an hour and 20 minutes by bus. It's only going to cost you $1.75. I found that Los Angeles mass transit was about the least expensive I saw in all of what I was looking at. Still slow, but an hour and 20 minutes, not too bad. If you were to drive, which is what a robotaxi would do, Google Maps indicates the drive takes about 33 minutes. Is it 30 minutes? Is it 40 minutes? It might take longer, but a bus faces the same traffic issues that a car is going to face. Figure you add 2 to 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes for the robotaxi to come pick you up. I think in Los Angeles, that's going to be one of the places that has the most robotaxi service the earliest, so it shouldn't be an issue. So I would expect that robotaxi service would arrive. You're in your house, you say, come get me. It might be there when you step out the door. According to Google Maps, the driving distance is 13.5 miles, or a little over 21 kilometers. So looking first at the early stage robotaxi pricing of 50 cents a mile, that 13.5 miles would end up costing $6.75. And that $6.75 is $5 more than taking mass transit to City Hall. So that is a big jump in the cost. So mass transit in this case is significantly less expensive. But keep in mind, it takes you an hour and 20 minutes to get there by mass transit by bus versus 33 minutes, really 35, 40 minutes by robotaxi. You're saving 40 minutes by robotaxi on average. And there's the convenience factor. Some of us don't like riding mass transit. If you're perfectly comfortable riding mass transit, if you have a lot of free time, no big deal. If that money is a really big deal to you, then mass transit's going to make sense. If you're the kind of person who takes Uber now, then you're going to jump at taking robotaxi and saving money because this is going to cost you a lot less than Uber. Going to the next level, when we get to the more efficient robotaxi stage in 5 years or so, that price ends up working out to about $2.70 at 20 cents a mile. And $2.70 is just barely more. It's less than $1 more than the $1.75. So you're saving 40 minutes and it's only costing you an extra $1. So at that level, it really starts to make a lot of sense to take robotaxi over taking mass transit. And then when you get to the hyper-efficient pod car world where it's only 10 cents a mile, it costs $1.35. It's 13.5 miles, 21.6 kilometers. At 13.5 miles at 10 cents a mile, it's only going to cost you $1.35 to get from SpaceX headquarters. You don't have to do any walking. You don't have to change buses. Much quicker, even cheaper. So that's the world we're looking at maybe 10 years from now, where at least in Los Angeles, and you're going to see from the rest of this video, that once we get to a world of hyper-efficient robotaxis, mass transit's probably going to evaporate. It's not going to make sense for almost anyone to take mass transit anymore. Let's talk about another ride in Los Angeles. If you're going from SpaceX headquarters to UCLA, you would again take bus 210 on Crenshaw Boulevard to the Metro Line E, which is like a rail, more of a, rather than buses, this is more like a train or a rail line. And then you would take, I've never taken a bus or a train in Los Angeles, so this is all unfamiliar to me. I've been in Los Angeles many times, never took mass transit. You take bus 210 to Metro Line E, you take that to bus number 8, and that gets you to UCLA. For both trips, you leave at 8 a.m. To get to City Hall, you get there about 9:20 a.m. To get to UCLA, you would get there at 9:25 a.m., take mass transit. So in this case, going to UCLA, it was an hour and 25-minute trip. And again, the cost is $1.75. Again, Los Angeles mass transit, in terms of pricing, it's a real bargain. The drive time is 40 minutes. Figure 45 minutes when you add in the time you're waiting for the robotaxi if you have to wait. So you're still saving about 40 minutes on the trip. The driving distance from SpaceX headquarters to UCLA is 15.5 miles or 24.8 kilometers. So at 50 cents a mile, it works out to $7.75 for the trip, which is $6 more than that mass transit trip. Now again, you get to this question, I'm saving 40 minutes, is that worth $6 to me? If you are a minimum wage worker making $10 an hour, maybe it's more clear that you want to take the mass transit. If you're a professional making effectively $30, $40, $50 an hour, it makes a lot of sense to take the robotaxi over mass transit in that circumstance. When you get down to the more efficient 20 cent a mile cost for robotaxi, again 5 years down the road, that's going to cost $3.10, which is still a little more than $1 more than mass transit. But for $1.50 or $1.40 or whatever, saving 40 minutes, that's a no-brainer for most people. When you get to the hyper-efficient pod car robotaxi world of my dreams 10 years from now, that's only going to cost $1.55 less than the mass transit option. It's going to get you there quicker. It's going to be so much more convenient. Mass transit will be dead. I looked at San Francisco next. For San Francisco area, for the Bay Area of California, I decided let's go from Tesla headquarters in Palo Alto. For those who don't know, I attended Stanford for 3 years. Wasn't very good at it, but I was a graduate student there. Didn't complete my PhD degree, but I got a master's degree. I'm familiar with Palo Alto. Absolutely beautiful spot, one of the most beautiful places on earth. And the Bay Area of California in general, gorgeous area. I looked at going from Tesla headquarters to one of my favorite places in San Francisco, the Exploratorium. This is a hands-on kids science museum. It's the best one. I haven't been everywhere in the world, but it's the best one I've ever seen by far. It's a fantastic place to take your kids. And look, I'm basically a kid when I walk in there. I love a lot of things in there. Again, I shot for roughly an 8 a.m. departure time. I found an 8:27 trip. You start with the Dumbarton Transbay, which means you have to cross. The way Google Maps routed me, rather than going straight up from Palo Alto into San Francisco, apparently the best way to get there was to go across the bay on the Dumbarton Bridge using the Dumbarton Transbay. And then you would take another line up. From there, you would take the BART up to the Exploratorium. I was surprised at how expensive the mass transit option was in the Bay Area. The transit across the Dumbarton Bridge was $6 and the BART was $9.25 for a total of $15.25. You might guess that Robotaxi is going to win this one. The total travel time was an hour and 53 minutes. This was the best option that Google Maps offered for getting from this spot in Palo Alto to getting to the Exploratorium in San Francisco, which is on the Embarcadero. It's on a pier, beautiful spot. The driving time, according to Google Maps, is about an hour. It's about 39 miles or 62.4 kilometers. So at 50 cents a mile, it's a little over $19 to take a robotaxi, this fantasy 50 cent a mile robotaxi that's coming soon, from Tesla headquarters to the Exploratorium. It costs a little bit more than the mass transit option, but it's nearly an hour quicker for a few bucks. So that's kind of a no-brainer already, that you'd rather spend 20 bucks on a robotaxi that picks you up at your place, saves you from having to do any walking, drops you right off at the front door, and saves you an hour of time. It really stands out when you go to the more efficient robotaxi world that I think is coming in 5 years, where you pay 20 cents a mile and only costs you less than $8. So it's saving you $7 versus mass transit, and it's getting you there quicker. Mass transit's going to be dead quick in that scenario. And of course, in the podcar robotaxi world, where it's only costing 10 cents a mile, it's only $3.90. This is amazing. It gets you there fast, it's convenient, much, much cheaper than the mass transit option. So I live in Florida, beautiful sunny Florida, and I figured, well, let's talk about, and Florida is one of the larger states that, I think it's the #2 state following this channel. So I thought I'd talk about Florida a little bit, and I went with Miami to start. I live in Boca Raton, Florida, which is just north of Miami, and I'm going to cover Boca next. I decided to look at a short trip. What if somebody was going from Miami International Airport to the American Airlines Arena? For people who don't know, the American Airlines Arena is where the Miami Heat play basketball. There's also some big concerts there. I took my family to see Ariana Grande and Taylor Swift on 2 different occasions at the American Airlines Arena. There's a lot of other activities around that. That's kind of a hot spot in Miami where there's a lot to do. The Arch Center, there's so much going on there. It's a beautiful spot. Again, gorgeous view of the Biscayne Bay. So I said, let's take a look at this. What's it going to be to get from Miami Airport to the American Airlines Arena? And mass transit did pretty well in this scenario. Inside the airport, there's something called the Miami Mover. That gets you to the Dadeland South rail line. The total trip is only 33 minutes, which, you know, when you look at the distance, it's not that far, but 33 minutes is not that bad. The total cost is only $2.25. That's a pretty good deal getting from Miami Airport to where you want to go. I think there's a fair bit of walking to get to the Miami Mover, and you might save a little bit of time on a robotaxi picking you up at the curb. I flew into Miami Airport once and had to walk to the Mover. It seemed like it took a while. Maybe I did it wrong. But in any event, this came up with 33 minutes on the way I measured it, and it came up with a fairly low cost of $2.25. And for those who are familiar with Miami traffic, you probably have some idea what's coming next. I should say I timed this for if you were going to an event at the American Airlines Arena. So you're leaving the airport at 6:30 p.m. and hopefully arriving at the American Airlines Arena sometime around 7 o'clock. It took 25 minutes, according to Google Maps, to drive from Miami Airport to American Airlines Arena, only 8 miles. This is a testament to how bad traffic is in Miami, and that doesn't include the panic of seeing how bad people drive in Miami. It's like a nightmare watching Miami driving. So that's 8 miles or 12.8 kilometers. At 50 cents a mile, the robotaxi cost is only $4, so it's not that much more than the mass transit option. But again, it's costing you a little bit more money, about $1.75 more. It's not really saving you much time because you're going to have to wait, especially in the airport. You're going to have to wait for that robotaxi to pick you up, so that might take 5 minutes. It takes 25 minutes to get there, so really you're only saving a few minutes on the robotaxi option in this particular scenario that I chose. Once you go to the efficient robotaxi, where the cost only gets down to only 20 cents a mile, yeah, now it's going to cost less. Now it's $1.60. It actually costs less than taking the mass transit option, and it does get you there a little bit quicker. So it's a closer call, I think, depending on where you are in the airport and what traffic's like that day in Miami, because the rail line is not going to be slowed by bad traffic. So the rail may still hold up for a while in Miami in that particular circumstance. It may still survive for a while. Once you get to the podcar robotaxi, now your cost is only 80 cents for that trip, significantly less expensive than the mass transit. Maybe in a future world of robotaxis, we're going to have a lot better traffic situation, either because of boring company tunnels or because the cars are communicating with each other or whatever, and we end up with quicker traffic in the cars. We'll see. Now, for my local people here in Boca Raton, Florida, I looked at what if you were going from Boca Raton Town Center. It is a very large shopping mall, one of the larger malls, I think, in the United States. There's a lot of big malls here, so I'm not so sure about that, but it's a big mall. It is a popular location that pretty much everybody in Boca knows and everybody goes to at one point or another for something. And I thought, what if we went somewhere I go frequently, Broward Center, which is the Broward Center for Performing Arts. It is near Las Olas, which is sort of the main drag in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It's a place where you see a lot of shows. I've seen a lot of shows there myself. So I was wondering, well, what would it be to take mass transit from Boca Town Center to the Broward Performing Arts Center versus what would it take in a robotaxi? And I've driven there myself many times, and traffic in Fort Lauderdale can be a real pain. So I anticipated driving wouldn't be that great of an option, but let's see what we come up with. Now for this trip, I did an 8 a.m. start time. That probably wasn't the right choice. I probably should have done an evening trip to get to a show, but I ended up with an 8 a.m. start time, which accounts for rush hour. Some of this trip is going to be on rail, which is going to be better than cars in rush hour because the rail isn't, the brunt of the trip is on what's called the tri-rail, and that's going to be quicker than cars in rush hour. With the mass transit option leaving at 8 a.m., Google Maps said we get there at 9:27 a.m. for a total of 1 hour and 27 minutes. First, you take a PalmTran bus from the town center to the tri-rail, then you take the tri-rail down to Fort Lauderdale, and then you take a Broward Transit bus to get from the tri-rail to the Broward Center. $2 for each bus, $3.75 for the rail, total of $7.75. Maybe there's a deal if you're riding on the one bus and you switch to the other bus. They might give you a deal. I'm not sure about that. But call it $7.75 because that's what I came up with. Google Maps estimated the drive time going at 8 a.m. to be 40 minutes. That's 20 miles of driving or 32 kilometers. That works out to you're only averaging 30 miles per hour, and a lot of this trip is on an interstate highway with a speed limit of 65 miles an hour, so which is a little over 100 kilometers an hour for people in countries that don't use miles per hour. So it's a very low average speed because of all the traffic you're going to encounter. And even with all that, you get there 40 minutes quicker. Again, figure a few minutes to wait for the Robotaxi to pick up. You're still saving more than a half hour by taking the Robotaxi. Because it's 20 miles or 32 kilometers at 50 cents a mile, that works out to $10. $10 is more expensive than the mass transit option. Costs a couple bucks more, saves you more than a half hour. For most people, it's going to be worth it to spend a couple bucks to save that half hour. Unless you just like riding mass transit. Okay. I don't think the buses in Boca, in Palm Beach County and Broward County are that pleasant. Tri-rail is probably not so bad. When you get to the more efficient Robotaxi model, where it's only costing the rider 20 cents a mile, again, we're talking 5-10 years down the road. Now we've just dropped the price dramatically. It's only costing $4 to get from Town Center to the Broward Performing Arts Center versus $7.75 for mass transit, and you're saving time. So we're already at no-brainer land. We're going to take Robotaxi over mass transit. That mass transit option is going to die. Then, of course, you get to the pod car Robotaxi, where it's only costing $2 instead of $7.75, and the mass transit option is dead. Next, I looked at New York City, something I'm very familiar with. The first thing I looked at was JFK Airport to Wall Street. That is a trip I have made. I've made many trips from New York City airports into the city to various locations. For people who aren't familiar with New York City, it can have some very, very bad traffic. If you have an option of taking a rail line and a subway, it's usually going to be quicker than driving if there's bad traffic. You have to go out of your way sometimes, and that's what you're going to see in this route. If the driving isn't so bad, the driving's probably going to be a better option. When you're taking your own car rather than a Robotaxi, one of the big consequences of driving into Manhattan is you got to park, and parking can be very expensive. But here we're using the Robotaxi option, so you're not paying for parking. When I ran my numbers, I didn't account for bridge tolls, and I would expect that Robotaxis will take bridge tolls. So as I'm talking, I'm going to try to take account for the bridge tolls when I do these numbers. I would hope that when we get to a Robotaxi world, especially the pod car Robotaxi world, there would be less taxes for bridges for hyper-efficient vehicles, or maybe Elon Musk is going to build boring company tunnels to take people from JFK and LaGuardia into Manhattan. LaGuardia is the other major airport in New York. There's also a Newark airport in New York, New Jersey. For those who don't know this one detail about New York City airports, New York City has a very, I guess I would say, impressive subway system. It's got ups and downs, but it covers a lot. But for some reason, which is a long conversation we're not going to have here, New York City has never extended the subway line all the way to JFK Airport or LaGuardia Airport. This is bizarre. The subway costs $2.75. It's very convenient. It can take a while. It can have some other frustrations, but it's only $2.75 to go anywhere in the system. Because you have to do something else, it can really raise the price. If you're coming from LaGuardia Airport, I chose JFK Airport for this, but if you're coming from LaGuardia Airport, you can choose the option of taking a bus to Jamaica Station and then taking a subway in, and the fare includes the subway ride. So it's only $2.75. I happen to choose JFK Airport because JFK Airport's a much nicer airport, and it's more straightforward. The bus ride from LaGuardia to Jamaica is a hassle. And the other bus ride, there's another bus you can take into Manhattan. Either way, the bus rides are more of a hassle. So from JFK to Wall Street, Google Maps suggested taking the air train to Howard Beach. You can also take the air train to Jamaica Station. The subway line from Howard Beach goes to Wall Street, so I think that's why it shows this. If you were going somewhere else in Manhattan, there's a really good chance it would suggest you take the air train to Jamaica Station and then take either Long Island Railroad or the subway into Manhattan. The Long Island Railroad option would probably cost more because you would be paying first for the air train, $5. Then you would be paying for the train ride. It's probably at least $5 or $10, and then you'd be paying $2.75 for the subway. So the way I did it here, you're paying for the air train $5 and the subway $2.75, so it costs $7.75. I took 11 a.m. as the start time. Google Maps, I think I took 11 a.m. because I think that's when I was running my numbers. Doing it during rush hour would probably have yielded different traffic times, although there's still pretty heavy traffic all the time going into Manhattan. Google Maps came up with 11 a.m. start time to 12:13 p.m. or 1 hour and 13 minutes, 73 minutes. Google Maps said the driving time was only 32 minutes, which is a pretty good deal. I think your experience may vary. It came out to 19.5 miles or 31.2 kilometers. Going at the 50 cent a mile option, I came up with $9.75 for that distance. However, you have to keep in mind there might be a bridge toll, which could add, let's say, $5 to the trip. So you're up to around $15. It's significantly more expensive than the mass transit option. And I should say, by the way, the air train to Howard Beach subway ride A, that's a pretty convenient trip. The air train is very comfortable. The A train is slow. It's not super slow, but it's slow. But it's easy because you just take the A train and you get off. You're practically at your destination when you get out. So it's a pretty good ride. So you're still saving more than a half hour by taking the Model 3, Model Y Robotaxi to get from JFK down to Wall Street. It's costing you a few bucks, but if you're going to Wall Street, you're probably going to save half an hour and spend the money. Other parts of Manhattan, other trips might be different. Some people are more interested in saving money. I'm usually pretty cheap when I go into Manhattan. I go the cheapest way possible. But you know, I'm paying $7.75 to go into Manhattan versus what might be $30 or $40 for an Uber ride, because Uber can be very expensive going from JFK into Manhattan. If I had an option of paying 20 bucks, I don't think I would even think about it. I would just take the Uber or the Robotaxi. Getting to that future world with the more efficient Robotaxi model that only costs the user 20 cents a mile. So now it's $9 roughly to take the efficient Robotaxi to get into Manhattan versus $7.75. So you're paying a little bit more, but it's only $1 more. You're saving a lot of time. For almost anybody in New York, that's going to be worth doing. And then, of course, when you get to the hyper-efficient pod car world, I imagine, where it's going to cost you less than $2. Again, the bridge toll is going to get you. Hopefully, we're going to work that out with either a boring company tunnel or something else. If you get the boring company tunnel, the trip's going to be really fast, by the way. Elon's going to build a boring company tunnel from anywhere to anywhere. Probably one of the first places on the list outside of California would be from JFK Airport into Manhattan or from LaGuardia Airport into Manhattan. Those are no-brainers, and people on Wall Street would pay more for it. So I would expect when boring company tunnels come, that's what the pod car robotaxis are going to take. They're going to get you in there in 15 minutes or less, and they're going to cost a lot less than taking mass transit. The other route in New York City that I thought would be interesting was looking at New Jersey. There's a huge population in New Jersey that commutes into New York. And I looked at, all right, where can I find a Tesla store in New Jersey, and where can I find a Tesla store in Manhattan? So I did the Tesla store in Passaic, New Jersey, to the Tesla store on Washington Street in Manhattan. The transit option involved taking a New Jersey Transit bus to the Port Authority terminal in New York City, and then taking a subway down to where the Tesla store is. The total cost worked out to $8.75. For this trip, I got a start time of 10:52 a.m., arriving at the Tesla store in Lower Manhattan at 12:10 p.m., for a total travel time of 1 hour and 18 minutes. According to Google Maps, driving was going to take 28 minutes to go 18.3 miles, or about 29 kilometers. At 50 cents a mile, that works out to $9.15, which is just a little bit more than the transit cost. But of course, you have to add in bridge tolls. So it's going to cost more than transit by a few bucks, maybe $5 more. But it's going to get you there much, much quicker. 28 minutes versus 1 hour and 18 minutes. Figure it's 30 minutes versus an hour and 15 minutes, you're saving 45 minutes. You're doing a 30-minute trip instead of an hour and 15-minute trip. This is a huge, huge time saving for a few bucks. So even on the Model Y, Model 3 Robotaxi, you're saving so much time that it makes it worth the extra money. If we are able to get to that 20 cent a mile, highly efficient Robotaxi world that I think is coming, 5 to 10 years down the road, now you're looking at 20 cents a mile. This trip ends up costing $3.66. Once you add the bridge toll in, it's almost the same price as taking mass transit. Again, you're saving 45 minutes. This is a no-brainer. You're going to do that. Get down to the Podcar Robotaxi, less than $2 for the fare, plus the toll. It's costing you less than the mass transit option, getting you there so much quicker. This is crazy. People are going to jump in Robotaxis like mad. I decided to cover some international locations for this video because we have a lot of followers. This channel has a lot of followers in England, in Australia, and in Canada. So I want to thank you all for watching. So for London, I again went with where's a Tesla store? And there's a Tesla store at the Blue Water Shopping Plaza in Kent. I've never been to Kent. I was in England a long, long time ago. I stayed in Surrey and I desperately tried to find a Tesla location in Surrey and I failed. So apparently Tesla has not penetrated the Surrey area, but there's a Tesla store at this mall in Kent. And I chose the Tower of London as a destination because that's something geeky foreigners like me would be familiar with. The mass transit route taking you from Kent into the Tower of London, it involves taking the 484 bus, which cost a surprising £8. I was surprised how expensive that was, and I'm wondering if that's wrong, but that's what I came up with. Take the 484 bus, and that connects you to the Thames Link, which is £10.4, again, very expensive. That total cost is £18.4, which is about $23 for Americans and others. The start time was 4:40 p.m. You get to the Tower of London at 5:43 p.m. The total travel time is an hour and 39 minutes by mass transit. Now, maybe I picked the wrong location, but that doesn't seem like a very good option. But that's what I came up with. The driving option turned out to be much better in this situation. Google Maps said the drive would be 35 minutes. The distance is 21 miles or 34 kilometers. At 50 cents a mile, that works out to $10.55. Maybe I'm missing a toll or something, but it worked out to $10.55 the way I calculated it. That is much, much cheaper and much, much quicker than the mass transit option. I'm sure there are better options for mass transit than what I chose, but that came up like, wow, that's amazing. It cost half as much money to get from point A to point B on this particular trip, and it's an hour quicker. You save an hour. It's a 33-minute trip, figure 35 minutes or whatever waiting for the taxi, versus an hour and 40-minute trip. It's an amazing, amazing deal. And that's with a Model Y or Model 3 that's not yet in this super efficient world that I think we're heading towards with robotaxis that cost a lot less to operate. With a more efficient robotaxi that I think is coming at 20 cents a mile cost, you're talking about spending just over $4, saving you nearly $20 versus the mass transit option, getting you there much, much quicker. Again, a no-brainer. And in that hyper-efficient Podcar Robotaxi world, the cost is getting close to $2, which really starts to be amazing when you think about it, that you can go from point A to point B, it only costs you a couple bucks. To travel over 30 kilometers, over 20 miles to get somewhere, it only costs you $2 to get there. That's what, I really think that's 10 years down the road or less, and we're going to have this amazing world. We should be so excited for how good things are going to be in the future. Because I have a lot of followers in Canada, I wanted to look at Canada, and the biggest city in Canada, I believe, is Toronto. I've spent more time in Vancouver myself, and maybe I should have done Vancouver. Sorry, Vancouver people, I did Toronto. Maybe I should have done Montreal, je parle un peu de français, but I speak a little French. But I chose Toronto because I believe that's the biggest city. So I found a Tesla store in Oakville, and I found a Tesla store in North York. So I said, well, let's do Tesla to Tesla. The Google Maps option did not look very good for mass transit. It was a 30-minute walk at the start to get from the Tesla Oakville location to the first transit stop. It's a 30-minute walk to take the LW train, take that to the #1 bus or light rail, and that worked out to $11.05 Canadian, so a ballpark $11 Canadian. And that $11 Canadian today in American dollars is about $8. If you didn't want to do the 30-minute walk, then it would require an additional bus and it would take longer. This trip, leaving at 11:56 a.m., arriving at 1:53 p.m., took nearly 2 hours. Costs $8 American, $11 Canadian, took nearly 2 hours. Driving time, 30 minutes. Saves an hour and a half to take a Robotaxi. It's 27 miles or about 44 kilometers. The cost, because it's 27 miles, works out to about $13.50. That is more than the mass transit option by about $5, but again, you're saving an hour and a half. This again is a pretty clear choice that you would want to take that. Go down 5-10 years down the road to when we get more efficient Robotaxis where it's only going to cost the user 20 cents a mile. This is not crazy. This is going to happen. Now it's going to cost you $5.42, costs you less than mass transit, gets you there quicker. Podcar Robotaxi is less than $3. This is where we're heading. Even in a city like Toronto, which is known for having good mass transit, it's going to make more sense to take Robotaxis. Last, I did Sydney, Australia. I took the Tesla supercharger station in Drummoyne, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, to the Sydney Opera House. You take bus M52, 18 minutes of walking. The fare was $3.73 Australian. That works out to $2.44 in US dollars. Pretty reasonable cost. It's a 42-minute trip. Driving was only a 20-minute trip, so it saves you about 20 minutes. The distance is about 5 miles or 8 kilometers. Costs about $2.50 American to drive there versus $2.44 to take mass transit. Again, we're looking at a no-brainer. You're saving 20 minutes. It's costing you the same amount of money. You get to the world of more efficient Robotaxis, you're saving more money. You get to the Podcar Robotaxi world, that trip only costs you 50 cents American. Half a dollar. $1 for the efficient Robotaxi, 50 cents for the Podcar Robotaxi. It's killing mass transit. You're going to see when we go down the road and we get to these Robotaxis becoming everywhere, becoming less expensive to ride, the world of mass transit is going to die. There's going to be very few places where you're going to want to take mass transit over Robotaxi. Thank you very much for watching. Let's look forward to this brilliant Robotaxi world that's coming. Tesla's doing a great job making our lives better. More to come. I'm going to do more videos coming up soon. Thank you.